Okay, Trey, how you doing? I've got your work up here. And before I really talk about the layout here, I've got a lot to say with the layout, of course, but I want to talk about your email that you had sent me regarding the fact that some of the images weren't showing properly in your PDF. And the reason for that is, as I explained in my response, is that when I opened up the InDesign file, a lot of those images weren't linked. A couple of the images in question you were talking about are the background images right here. And neither of those are linked. And those are the images in question. So my recommendation is to link those up, make sure those are linked, and or you can embed them in your InDesign file too. The caveat there is that it increases the file size. So by linking, but what you're doing is you're telling your computer that this is the path to find this image. Okay, so the image isn't stored within InDesign. It's stored on your computer, and the link tells the document to go out and take this path to find the image and show it properly. That's called linking. If it's not linked, your software is going to go out to try to find the image. It won't be able to find the image, so it could give various results in saving as a PDF. The most common I've seen is very pixelated, really super low quality, which is indicative of an image that wasn't found through the link panel. But it seems like yours was more, you said that the images didn't show up, which I saw them in the PDF file. So I'm not real sure exactly, but I did respond to your inquiry, and please let me know if that makes sense to you. Okay, let's go ahead and jump over to the layout. I think the layout is much better than the first iteration, so that's fantastic. Definitely moving in the right direction. This page is actually pretty good. It's your type columns are two columns wide, as we can see here. It's at the 4-column grid that we had set up, right? So you've got the 4 columns there, so you've got 2 columns on the left, 2 columns on the right. That's fantastic. Over here, it's a little bit different because you've got the type in the 1st and 4th column, and then in the 2nd and 3rd column, you've got the image, which is fine, but the problem is that the type columns are so small in this prescribed grid that we're using. The type columns are so thin, being that there's 4 on each page, that this is a really super narrow type column, probably too narrow. Now, optimal character count for a type column is typically between 50 and 65, or 50 and 70 characters. Roughly about 66 characters is your optimal sweet spot. And that includes punctuation and spaces. So right here, you're probably less than 25 or 30. So what that does is it creates too much work for the viewer, because they read this just a couple of short words, then bounce back to the beginning of the next line. Couple of short words, bounce back. So there's a lot of movement, a lot of eye movement that creates fatigue, and therefore those short columns of type, those short line lengths are not recommended. I think one of the things you could do here is you could take this, what I would do is this, I would take, so let me just show you that. What I would do is I would configure your type in the second 2 columns so that they're consistent with the 2-column type here, and then place your image in the 1st column. That way, the image is over here, okay? The center line would be right here, okay? So your type would consume this double wide columns like we see here and here, but then that would leave 2 columns here to place the image. So what I would recommend is just watch my cursor for some ideas on layout. Okay, so you have Star Wars. I would increase that a little bit. Really try to do something interesting with that particular headline, why Star Wars is dying. Technically, you don't need these. And even if you do want to include the quotes on Star Wars, these are the wrong kind of quotes. These are actually foot markers, the feet and inches. These are feet. What you would want to use is curly quotes. And those are called smart quotes. And you can just do a quick Google search on how to create smart quotes in InDesign. And it's really actually very easy to do. It's just a quote instead of the single you would have the quote marks. And again, you're looking for smart quotes or curly quotes. Um, what I would do here is I would say, okay, so you've got your why is Star Wars dying? Why Star Wars is dying? And then right under, watch my cursor. So there's your headline, right? Right underneath your headline, would take this deck head right here, and I would expand it a little bit and try to you can go ahead and span that. You could break the grid there, just so you have your headline here, and then like this. And take up this. Don't be afraid to take up these. You want to introduce the viewer to the layout. So you kind of want to keep this area open instead of so congested. Well, it'll be more inviting for the viewer. So I wouldn't start the text till about right here or so. So you've got headline, you've got your little deck head right there, and then your byline. The byline is who wrote the article, so it's by so-and-so. Then what I would do is I would take this image, reduce the size, and place it right over here. Okay, then I would go ahead and start the two-column text somewhere around here. So you have your two-column. You can start with a drop cap. That's fantastic right there. Really good job. Might also be interesting to use a W from this typeface, this one that you're using here and here, just for some variety. It might be interesting. Try it. Also, I would recommend going 3 columns deep on your drop cap instead of just 2. Okay, so that takes care of the first page. Another thing I want to mention is that these pull quotes, typically a pull quote would reside right in the middle of a paragraph of text. And you would have a little separation, just like you have right here. You'd have a little separation above, a little separation below, and then you have the pull quote right in there. The reason that you don't want to place pull quotes near the images is because it's going to be confusing. These almost look like captions for the image. Now, one of the things that's happening in your pull quotes, and I think this is a really interesting configuration with the quote marks, but the problem is that basically what you've done is you've taken this configuration here, the background, and you've just reduced it to fit right here. So it's not following the same aspect ratio as the original graphic. So that could end up being problematic because this looks distorted. Okay, so what I would do is instead of trying to use the same graphic for the background, I would just use smaller typeface since this is going to be smaller, and then assemble the curly quotes in the background there accordingly. Because right now it clearly, you can clearly see that this has been stretched or shrunk, and it's distorted. The curly quotes there are distorted, as we can see. Okay. These right here, good job drawing attention to these. However, right now they're placed like halfway between the 2 paragraphs. So it's really difficult for the viewer to say, hey, does this belong to this paragraph or does this belong to this paragraph? So what I would recommend is bringing this a little closer to the paragraph that it identifies with. So you would just reduce that space right there and right there. Okay, you've got right here, you've got continued on page. But this is a double page spread, so the center fold would be right there. So you typically wouldn't use a continued on page if the next page is right next to the first page. So for that reason, I recommend removing that, and only use the continued on the last page of the article. Finally, don't forget to add your folio. That's your page numbers. And also, this area right here just seems really jumbled. Everything seems really jumbled up right here. I think that, yeah, right now, I think that we could probably try to figure out a way to improve this whole scenario right here. Right now, you've got the image, we got the little fan falling in the box, we've got the pull quote, and then we've got what seems to be a type wrap right over here. So I would reconsider this area, try to make it a little bit less cumbersome, as there's a lot of visual weight up here because of the amount of elements that are all stacked right here. So reconsider that area right there. Other than that, I think it's a really, really good improvement. So obviously, you're learning a lot about InDesign, and that is fantastic. That's great. As I said, the difference between the first iteration and this iteration is night and day. This one is superior, and I suspect that your final iteration will be the best of the 3. So that said, let's go ahead and keep on working hard. Let's get ready for your submission for your final submission for the assignment. And if you have any questions at all, please let me know. I'll be glad to make any necessary clarifications. Thank you very much, Trey.